Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm so happy to be here today. Let me just start with that. But hi, for everyone who doesn't know me, my name is Jalyn Cox. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the president of Flawless Brown. I'm so excited to be hosting this Tough Topic Tuesday today. Our theme is the Soapbox with Toshi Reagon. Toshi, you're amazing, and I am so in awe at the panel that we've pulled together because it's just full of powerful and inspiring people. So yeah, today for our Tough Topic Tuesday is the soapbox. The way it's going to work is we are going to be showing a couple videos and I'm going to be reading a couple sections from 3 submissions, and then we're gonna have some questions about it and get talking about it and start some dialogue and conversation. So yeah, let me introduce our panel to everyone today. So we have Pranit Chand, and Pranit is a sophomore IDIP major, originally from Marlborough College, but now has joined us at Emerson. He is an international student from Kathmandu, Nepal. He is a Marlborough IDIP senator in SGA, and he is also a member of MCOM. In Marlborough, he was one of the leaders of Living in Color, which was a BIPOC advocacy group. So welcome, Praneet. Next, we have Monica Keipp. Monica is a Filipina American lesbian woman. She is a sophomore Business of Creative Enterprise major with a minor in comedy writing and performance. She is the co-exec of Asia, captain president of Emerson Cheer Squad, and she is a student assistant for intercultural student affairs. Um, Naomi is a senior creative writing major with a minor in peace and social justice. Naomi uh, does a plethora of things on campus, a few of which is she is the president of the Senior Class Council, president of our Black Student Union on campus, Ebony, and music director of Emerson Troublemakers. And she is a member of Zeta Phi Eta. And also, I will add, a member of Flawless Brown as well. Love you. Next, we have Max Boone. Max is a Vietnamese American performer, choreographer, and advocate. He is a senior musical theater major at Emerson College, and he is the co-chair of Power, a member of the Emerson Dance Company, a member of Skin Tones, and over his time at Emerson, performed in many theatrical productions. And last but certainly not least, Toshi Reagon. It is a complete honor to be able to introduce you here today. You are honestly somebody that I completely look up to for so many different reasons. But anyways, anchored by the creative process and presentation of her opera, Octavia E. Butler's Parable of the Sower, renowned musician, composer, producer, and activist Toshi Reagon has created a framework for community organizing through artistic engagement. Parable Path Boston is Toshi's year-long artist residency at Emerson College, where she has birthed the concept of the soapbox, which has brought us all here together today. Today's a super special day, also just because it is the first Tough Topic Tuesday that has incorporated the Intercultural Center, Arts Emerson, and Flawless Brown. So that's super exciting. Now I'm going to invite Toshi to talk a little bit about the soapbox.
Wow, this is so cool. I am so happy to be here with all of you, and to all of our listeners and watchers. I'm really excited about this conversation. Basically, the soapbox really came about. I was having conversations with a faculty member, Najim Rahim, who is on sabbatical, and we are working on a kind of a gigantic theatrical piece that would be inclusive of all kinds of possible collaborations. And I just asked, like, how are people doing? Because we had been talking about this, and then COVID happened, and then the school shut down, and everybody had to leave. And I was like, how are people? what happened? And in having that conversation just about like how are people doing, we really realize sometimes when there's something that happens really fast, nobody asks the questions that need to be asked. And because this was such an here you are grouped inside of a school, but all of a sudden the fleeing was very individual and it was very quick, and people had to just kind of be like, well, where am I going to go? And it started to just hear all of the different conditions that people were in, and that inspired me to think about like, well, how do people get to say what they need to say about a situation that they're in? And later, with a conversation with Amy, I hope I don't mess up your name, Amy, but Amy Vashlishan Murray, we were talking about science, and we were talking about like the knowledge that humans know about themselves. When something happens, for example, I call fibroids slavery. I am like, fibroids come from slavery. And I don't have any medical evidence of that, but I am like, look at what it is. How could it not be? You know, that's the way I think about it. But how does the origin point of it actually get studied in the context of Black people during the transatlantic slave trade and then enslavement of Black people over hundreds of years on this land? So I don't think it's been studied, you know, scientifically. And so that made me think of how important it is to have access to the open mic, to have access to raising your voice and actually your voice being heard, and that there can't actually be too many ways that that happens. So as you can see from everyone's gathered, they do multiple things, but that then like, let's do more and let's raise the voices more and let's bring the questions into the air and into action, and let's bring the statements and let's bring the emotion and let's bring everything. And the Soapbox is a citywide platform that's rooted here in my collaboration with ArtsEmerson. And that's the short version.
Wow, I love that. Thank you so much, Toshi. That's
Thank you.
Incredible. Now we're going to turn to the Purple Table Talk, our panel, our purple, just because we're here at Emerson. So yeah, let's bring up Soapbox entry 1 last week in terms of the protest week, and I would love to read a couple paragraphs from the mission statement just due to time reasons. So I will do that now. But I definitely recommend everyone go read the full list of demands, the mission statement afterwards. We are tired. We are tired of being asked about our opinions and not being listened to. We are tired of being exploited for our emotional and intellectual labor. We are tired of hearing about our peers of color being traumatized and gaslit. We are tired of being told that there is change, but not seeing or feeling it. We are tired of the lack of transparency. We are tired of administration going through the motions. We are tired of being told to wait. We are tired of watching our peers lose their excitement, motivation, and hope for their future at this university. This past summer, numerous Black, Indigenous, and people of color enrolled as students at Emerson College attended 3 meetings with administrative staff to share their concerns about the college's treatment towards students of color. This only happened after being pressured by numerous students who felt that the college had been invalidating their experiences. The administration claimed that these meetings were open to all students of color, but had advertised them to the student body minimally. They also held these meetings in parallel with RA training. Note, many student leaders of color are also RAs. Whenever we would raise our concerns to them, they would respond defensively and with excuses. They listed several ways the college was already working to address our concerns, as if to pat themselves on the backs for their efforts that were ultimately unproductive. And now for the last 2 paragraphs. We know students of color before us have been doing this work. However, for students who have been here since 2017, haven't seen tangible change other than the students of color pre-orientation. Long-term plans aren't guaranteed to be carried out, and how can we trust administration to continue the work after all of us have graduated? We do not want the students coming after us to feel the way we did or to be writing a similar statement. We cannot continue to drag our feet in a cyclical conversation without addressing the root of our problems. Students of color have felt isolated at this institution for years, and the administration has had years to address the same concerns. Countless times, students have been told that change is slow and that they must wait a few years for things to get better. And yet we continue to find ourselves in uncomfortable and even traumatic situations. Emerson is not alone in creating environments for their students such as this one, ones where students do not feel safe or secure in the way that they are receiving their education and by extension, their growth. However, with as much as Emerson touts being different from other institutions, it is disappointing to see that they are no different in this regard and that they choose not to stand out in the way they treat their students of color by lifting them up instead of pushing them out. We deserve better, there needs to be change now, and we refuse to wait any longer. So, yeah, this mission statement makes me think about how so many students of color at this institution do not feel seen or heard, which I think is so perfect for the soapbox. Institutions at large are inherently racist. So I want to kind of pose the question to start. How do you continue to fight when you feel hopeless? How do we continue to demand change when you feel unheard?
I feel good to tackle that right quick. Can you hear me good? Is my mic good? All
We
right,
can hear you
beautiful.
so perfect.
All right, good. So let me just reintroduce myself really quick. Hi, I'm Monica. She, her, hers. Um, yeah. So I definitely um so it a lot of the times this semester particularly because of COVID has felt like very isolating, but I feel like I've been feeling it just some days when you're like, I'm gay and a woman of color in this world, and that is really, really hard sometimes. And so just like sitting with that, and just like sometimes it was hitting really, really hard this year. And I just like was having difficulty coping with it, which is like in a way that I've like haven't experienced much before. Um, but one way that like I find solace, like kind of in coping with that, is just like finding my people. Like one of the people I live with this year, she is a bisexual Korean woman, and so having someone who's not only Asian but gay in my life, like I usually kind of like compartmentalize my identities. Like it's just a lot of like white gay people or it's Asian straight people. Like it's very much like compartmentalized and not very like intersectional, just like in my life, which like makes it really difficult to like understand my identities as a whole because they ultimately form with one another. Like my experience is so different from just white gay people and also Asian straight people. So yeah, it's really a blessing that I've had this one individual who lives with me, just to like have her there. Like I can just go in the hallway and I see her and I'm like, I know I'm gonna be okay. Like I if anything gets so bad, I know that like we have each other because I know that she really understands what's happening. And like honestly, like being with Asia, like going to Asia in my freshman year was like one of the first times that like like at Emerson, I first got here and I was like, especially being from LA, like I'm not even, I always say this and it's not a joke. Like I didn't go to school with more than 10 white people. Like you could count the white people on two hands. And it was, I liked it that way. It was nice. No hate, but it was nice for it to be like that. But then coming to Emerson, I was like, oh, okay. Like it's like this then. So going to Asia and just seeing like, there was like one girl on the e-board who was Filipino as well. And I was like, you like I see you. And so just having that connection and just like really like gravitating towards the people that I know like could share like at least a little bit of that with me. Like not that it's great that we share like a struggle because that's not great, but like just knowing that I'm not alone in that because it can feel so isolating at times. So just like coming home and finding my communities and just being very grateful that like there are also people in my communities who like want other people to find them as well, like making themselves known that like they want people like them to find them too because I want to find them as well. So being able to find that and having that community at Emerson, like even though it may be small, like it's still there and it's still so powerful, particularly because it's so small. So yeah, just finding my people, finding my community.
Yeah. First of all, snaps. Finding your people is as they said in the chat to all panelists and attendees, it's a gem. It's really something that you want to collect. Something I immediately think of. Excuse the hum. It's the little building hum. Can't get rid of it. But so something I immediately think of is this wonderful phrase from a well-known activist, this idea of radical self-care. So to introduce myself again, hi, I'm Naomi Jones. I'm a senior creative writing major who does too many things on campus to list right now. And I have been one of those people that have been in the conversations. Hi, Jay. Been one of those people that have been in the conversations, been in the table talks, had those intensive moments. And I used this word earlier before my therapy session, where I was talking about how I feel like the school has exploited me since coming on this campus. So even as a freshman, I came in second semester. So I was a late freshman. And what's crazy is that I immediately hit the ground running. I was getting involved in organizations, getting involved in protests, getting involved in petitions. And I found solace in being able to have people who looked like me and representation in a way that I hadn't had before, because I grew up in the suburbs. So I was the complete opposite. And there, you could count the amount of people of color on your two hands. So I did not like it. And then I decided to come to Emerson, and it was a big change. I'll say that it was a big change, because even though there's not as many, it's still more than what I experienced in my past. And so another thing that hit me was not only this idea that your self-care and your mental health is extremely important, but loving yourself in your own love language is also extremely important. Something I talked about with What Matters to Me and Why. This idea that, yes, you have these aspects of you that are so imperative to your personal growth, and you cannot pour from an empty cup. So you must pour into yourself. And so in doing that, I created this little bubble around me that created a moment of like beloved sisterhood, of having those people around me within Flawless Brown, which first welcomed me as a little baby freshman. And then also within Ebony, and finding joy and community and social life, and learning about Black history in a way that I was completely astonished by, because we didn't touch Black history in Waterford, Connecticut. And so bringing that back into Waterford afterwards, and being able to sit down and really develop this idea of yourself involving the community, and how you are a part of the community. You're individual and part of an organization that has a collective mode. Yes, it has a collective goal, but your individual self is extremely important. And I think that's the only way I could really make it through Emerson. Because not all the time did I have that joyous moments in organizations. Most of the time I was fighting for them, or advocating, or doing something else. And so not having those moments of joy as much as I wanted to forced me to have more moments of peace and understanding of my own personal self.
Wow. Meg, that was beautiful. And Monica, you as well. Wow. Yeah. I want to pose another question. And how has community healing worked for you? How has leaning into that helped you, I guess, when fighting the fight?
So this year I joined the Emerson College Skin Tones, and it had been something that had been on my bucket list for a very long time, but I just didn't really have time with how many things I was doing. But one of my dear friends, Eliana, they are the president, and they literally, since they took over, like, you really need to join. And I was like, I can't. But finally, with the pandemic, enough time kind of cleared in my schedule, and I went. And for those of you who don't know, the Skin Tones, the first hour of their rehearsal every single week is a communal space for any people of color to come. If you just want to be free from the obstacle of whiteness and just like vibe, you can. And I think like for men of color on campus, there isn't really like a flawless equivalent. So we don't have sisterhood. We don't have really like a space to just like create community, really. You know, I can go to Asian meetings, I can go to Ebony meetings and such, but it's not, I don't think, necessarily the same vibe. But sitting in those rehearsals every single week for that first hour, it really like made the world of a difference to me. It just was so clear to me that like I was not alone, because every single week everyone had something to say and something that was going on, and the weight of the world was a lot. And it was really beautiful to be able to build that. And so kind of building off of Jalyn's question, I think it was really just the emphasis of like, you're not alone. And I think kind of like Naomi was talking about, like we all had our individual perspectives, but there was a collective mode, and there was kind of a like general community that was healing to me, at least. And then even for those of you who don't know, Jalyn, Monica, and I were key organizers on the Week of Action, and Naomi spoke as well. And even amidst that, you know, we were all angry, or are all angry, and are all mad, and are all frustrated and exhausted. But even through that, like finding community in that feeling was also really beautiful. Like I think that like every single meeting that we had, of which there were many, it was still just like liberating in the way of finding people who were seeing the same things that you were. Because I think that this institution kind of operates off of this almost institutional gaslighting. Like it tells you over and over that things are okay when they're really not. And I think finding people who are like, no, 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 you see it too. Like, I'm not freaking crazy. Like, we are all, yes, you know? And I think that, I think it was just being able to affirm to myself what I was feeling beyond just, there's only so many times you can tell yourself you're not making it up, you know what I mean? So I think that was beautiful for me.
So going off what Max said, absolutely, I agree with everything you said. The institutional gaslighting part, everything that comes with it, and to give you a bit of a context, coming from Marlborough, which was already a very predominantly white institution, to coming to a larger institution, which is also very predominantly white, and at Marlborough we had like a handful of students of colors, and here the students of color who transferred to Emerson are just like 3 or 4. So you could already imagine the community we had there is almost negligible here. And to find that grounds, to find your people, to find that community, it's really difficult. And even given the sense of a pandemic and everything going haywire and then transitioning to a different school, you could say everything changed, but one thing didn't change. That was the racism. And I keep seeing this, and it's like everywhere, you know, classes, it's in orgs, it's and everything that's happening with the ESOC thing and students of color taking action. There's still people who are really close to me who are like, "What is this? I don't know what's going on. Can you please explain this to me?" And I'm like, I'm really sorry, but I cannot. That's not my job to explain it to you. You should be conscious and aware about it. And go ahead, go to the card website. There's posters everywhere. It's your job to educate yourself. And that sense of a community that was backing me up at Marlboro is to some extent not existent here. I don't blame anyone for that. It's just the transition is difficult for everyone. Trying to make sure that things are smooth. It's very difficult during a pandemic. And my sense of a community comes from my meditation group that I go to every Wednesday, and um, I go there. It's we have a check-in time for a few minutes, and that it's honestly, although it's not with just people of color, some people here are regular visitors there, but it's still there's something that keeps me close, keeps me grounded, that gives me hope a little bit. And I honestly look forward to those meetings every single week so much because it has kept me going. It's been a huge part of me. And creating that safe space is something I believe is really essential for every student of color, not just in a workspace or in a college setting, but even in your daily livelihood. And I believe that my people back from Arbor, we still have our Facebook group going and living in color. And every time someone posts something, they're like, "Oh shit, someone did something again. We need to support them." And we come together, we talk over there, especially during the elections. It was horrible. And yeah, just finding a sense of community is really great.
Thank you so much for that, Pranit. Thank you. That was honestly, yeah, when I'm trying to find my peace, meditation is like something that I've been practicing honestly since the pandemic really started. And it's honestly something that has changed my life a lot and just finding peace in myself, but also in a community setting, which I love. That's so incredible. Thank you for sharing that. Um, I kind of want to go to our next submission. Um, let's see if we can pull up the Vimeo again and see if we can, I think, share both the screen and audio. Ah, and this submission's from Jayhan Aisha. Thank you, Jay. She's here today. I saw her.
I'll be honest, the prompt gave me a bit of a headache. Because for starters, how can you go about fixing a system that you now understand was never meant to at all help you, people like you, your loved ones, or just anyone but the creators and people who identify with the creators? And I think for starters, recognizing that's a problem, and then definitely investing in imagination and creativity, because we have, I'll be honest, the prompt gave me a bit of a headache. Because for starters, how can you go about fixing a system that you now understand was never meant to at all help you, people like you, your loved ones, or just anyone but the creators and people who identify with the creators? And I think for starters, recognizing that's a problem, and then definitely investing in imagination and creativity, because we have a lot to unlearn and we have to, as the saying goes, think outside the box. And it's hard to do that when we've only ever been raised, conditioned, socialized one way. But the fact that you can recognize there's a problem shows that you're unlearning these things. You're socializing yourself better. And that's something worth patting yourself on the back for. Don't settle, of course. So I guess the next part of it is having a lot of compassion and grace for other people who are working on finding a solution, but also for yourself. Because the fact that you're listening to this is showing that you are actively trying to do better, actively trying to help other people. That's how we fix this. But there's things like activism burnout and not being able to cope by enjoying some of the things you used to, since there's no ethical consumption under capitalism. The system is capitalism. But that's okay. I mean, you may not indulge in it as much as you used to. So that you can keep going. And I think definitely relying more on the people we want to help, on the people we love. Because we're all capable of saving ourselves. but it'd be nice to not be alone. And just making sure that every effort you put in is the best that you could give it under your circumstances and the resources you're given, so you can come out of it with no regrets.
All of that. All of that. Thank you, Jay, for sharing that with us. Activism burnout is real. It is so, so real. So I guess that leads to our question. I'm gonna kind of say all of them and allow you to pick and choose whatever touches you. So, how do you continue the process of unlearning, unconditioning, and decolonizing yourself, and therefore others in your community at large, when you feel so damn tired? How can rest be decolonizing? How can rest be a form of resistance? What are the joys that keep you moving in these tough times?
I'll kick this off really quick. Well, so obviously I'm Filipino, and like I've learned so much about like just how deeply rooted colonialism is in Filipino culture, how heavily we've been colonized for so long. Like there's no reason my mom's last name should be Rodriguez. There's not a single reason that should be her last name. That's like even that like I grew up like very thankfully like one of the biggest like Filipino populated areas in LA, if not like California. I like went to high school there, which is just very much a blessing for me, and to like grow up with people like me. But every single one of us, it was like Santos, Marquez, Gonzalez. Like there is no reason that that should be our last names. And like I was talking with my white friends about like religion and how obviously I was like raised Catholic, and I kind of have like no relationship to it. I don't feel any particular way towards religion. But I just like personally, I'm like Catholicism was never supposed to be there in the first place. So I have a very tough time, like I think like recently in like trying to decolonize myself, particularly looking like in how I was raised with my own like culture. Like Catholicism and Christianity was never supposed to be there. We had our own religion, like polytheistic religions before we were colonized, and learning about that really beautiful history and how just like we were literally like forced out of it is just so heartbreaking. And to like I don't want to be devoted to like me personally a colonizer religion, like not saying that it's always a colonizer religion, but particularly to my culture it is very much a colonizer religion. So like I'm not going to look up to your gods because you like in the way that you structure your religion, like it wasn't for the interest of my people. Like it was horrible, and it was basically it was just like a power based thing, and it was imposing. It wasn't for like the good of God. Like I just don't believe that that's what it was. And it was also very tough because my comedy professor this year, he's a gem, but he came into to class the first day and talked about how he grew up in the Philippines because his parents were Christian missionaries. And I was like, oh, like that's really uncomfortable. And I was trying to like, you know, laugh it off as a joke, but like that is really like horrifying. Like when he said that, I was like, I don't want to hear how your family is literally in the Philippines, like actively still colonizing my people. I was like, I don't want you to talk about that, and I don't want to hear about it. It's like, it made me very, very uncomfortable. So like, just like reworking, also just like learning my people's like history, like on my own, because no one's teaching it. Like even in the sphere of like Asianness, let's be blunt, like people do not care about Filipino people. It's like like a lot of, especially in like mainstream media in America, like a lot of people have been, and not that it's like anybody's fault, like it's definitely like a white gaze fault that they only center like mostly East Asian voices, which is like not East Asian people's fault. It's white supremacy doing what it does because they're like the most palatable versions of Asian people and doing like white supremacy doing what it does best. But very much like if there's ever like an Asian American sphere, it's rare that we ever hear about Filipinos unless we're in the room being like, oh, we're here, let's tell our story, let's talk about this, that, and the other, and like our deep seated relationship with colonialism. And I think baked into that is like resistance. And so the way that I love to just like, I think that like the fact that we even have still a culture to celebrate is resistance, is that we've gone through so much colonization from Spain, from the US, from like other Asian countries, that like the fact that we even have our own culture, our own specific like values and like clothes and food and traditions is resistance. Like we've been able to retain like some of that stuff from our own culture. And so having that like traditional wear, like from when I was a kid, the ones that I have now is just like, I think it's so badass. I want to like celebrate that so much. And like, whenever I can talk about it, I'm like, let me talk about this. This is super cool. I don't want to hear about your culture from like New Jersey. Let's talk about this because this is dope. And this is something that's really cool to celebrate. And I definitely had hard times with like my white friends. Like I'll like talk about it, obviously very excited. And they just like try to do the white people thing where they like try to relate, but it feels in a way they're trying to leech onto it. And I'm like, you don't need to like leech onto my experience in other to empathize. You can just empathize. Like that's fine. Like I think they walk a very fine line, and it's often that they like tip over the fine line. So I'm always just trying to like, just basically like, I think that decolonization comes with resistance, like particularly to my culture. And in how that shows for me is just being like, we are here and I'm going to make you listen to it. Like, I don't care if you don't want to. I don't care if there's not a space. I'm kicking down a wall and making a space for us because I can and because I want to. And that's important.
Literally that, Monica. I love that so much.
I can also talk a little bit about, yeah, I do love that so much. But I can also talk a little bit about this idea of activism burnout. I know there is a question in the Q&A section for Toshi, so just so that you know, there is a question for you in there. But this idea of maintaining this level of like 110% it's kind of patriarchy and kind of capitalism. I don't mean to call anyone out, but it is. It's this idea that you have to keep going despite needing rest. Rest is a form of resistance in itself. And you're resisting this notion that you have to be everything for everyone at all points in time. That is inaccurate and not reality. And it's something that I am trying to unlearn right now. Like, so when you ask that question of things that you have to consistently unlearn, I'm like, ooh, because this idea of unlearning my own habits of constantly being like, it's okay, I don't need to sleep. I'll stay up until 2 a.m. because my friends need to text me, because somebody needs me, because I'm mentoring this, that, or the other. And this idea of needing to do that for everyone, but also not taking care of yourself, putting yourself at the bottom of a totem pole, allowing yourself to come second to everything else, that is unhealthy. And that is actually how you burn out your entire system, regardless of if you are being an advocate or an activist. And then being an advocate and activist puts that on 100 because you're doing it for people that you may not even know. And the fact that you don't know them isn't a blocker for you. So like for me, in Waterford, I participated in a bunch of different protests in which I had to do a couple of different speeches about the Waterford school system. Mind you, I graduated in 2017. So I was talking about the Waterford school system, and then people were like, yeah, you know, it hasn't changed. That's crazy. That person said a similar thing to me when they were like, yeah, you won't go anywhere. And this idea that like, yes, my experience can translate because the more personal something is, the more reachable it is. A class that I took here at Emerson taught me a little bit about the differentiation between resistance and rest, and how it's such a blurred line, because in it being a dotted line, you can act as though your rest is a form of empowerment for yourself, which is a form of resistance for the notion that you can't empower yourself. I don't know if that made sense, but if it did, great. So just this class called Writing and Resistance from Rajiv Mohabir, one of the best classes that I've ever taken in my entire life. And a thing, yes, I love Rajiv. A thing that I've learned from them and is that you need these moments to not only collect your mindset about something, and you are allowed to take time, and however that time is, you're allowed to take time to digest and then almost regurgitate what you think afterwards. Like you don't have to come back with responses every single time. And you can sit with things and you can let prompts fester in your spirit first and then let your creative being go. And that idea is something that I just learned recently. And so bringing that back into Waterford and bringing that back into the other organizations in Emerson, it's this idea that, yes, this is about community first. This is about yourself first. And by it being about that, by it being about our connection, our community, our socialization with each other, then the other things will start to change because our mindset is being changed by a social environment in which is inviting and welcoming. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it there for right now.
Thank you so much for that. Literally that. Rest as resistance, but also like when you naturally like empower yourself, that seeps into others and seeps into your community because people see you empowering yourself and that naturally empowers others. We have a Q&A for Toshi specifically. Toshi, how do you deal with activism burnout?
I don't have activism burnout. That's how I deal with it. I wanted to talk about the rest question. You can't get rest in a system that has never incorporated downtime for people. It's not a part of the construction of the United States of America. In fact, the United States of America is constructed the complete opposite. It's mostly has if you're not a part of that, tiny group of, white male land stealing, the list is long of violation. If you're not a part of that group, then you're basically not a whole human deserving of all of the things that humans need. And you're divorced from your rightful place on the earth in alignment with all of the other aspects of the earth, and that is the natural capacity of the planet. And you're treated as if you're not a part of that. You're not a part of air we breathe, and you're not a part of water, and you're not a part of plant life, and you're not a part of the literal construction of the planet. And what that gives permission to do is to abuse every single thing on the planet. So that is why, in connection with oppression of people, is the destruction of our water systems, is the destruction, the deforestation all over, like literally what we need on the planet to breathe. Is all of that is systemic all over the planet. All of that is a part of everything that you're dealing with. And so I think a lot of us have no idea how to create a system of balance. It's just not offered ever anywhere you go. It's there's certain cultures, like I love when I went to Sicily and it was so hot that they were like, wake up early, like, so get up at like 6 or 7 in the morning, and then like 11 o'clock go back inside. And then there, between 11 and 4, there was like a siesta, and then everything opened up again at 4. And somewhere in there was a 2 hours where you were just supposed to eat lunch and like, smoke a cigarette, which I don't do, but you know what I'm saying? Like, just don't be about your job. And same place, I think I went to France one time and I was trying to buy a tie for something. And the lady goes, nope, store's closed. And when do you open up? In 2 hours. Because I have to drink a cup of coffee and sit for a minute before I open this store up. So some cultures have some things in them, but America is built on such an intense and laborious, exploitive, cruel system. I feel like we're not talking about rest, we're talking about balance, because we don't want to get in a state of exhaustion where we have to call on, well, I need to occupy myself with getting rest, which means the time you go to sleep, you're actually not at rest. So it's a practice for all of us to create the balance in our lives. And even our revolutions are exploitive of that, because we're in a hurry and we're in an urgent state all the time. And so it is that you have a job or you're at school and you're occupying revolutionary space. And there's not much rest at all. And then, so these practices that you all shared, and some of them are the practices I have in my life as well, are the places where you get to nurture your spirit and nurture your soul, because you're operating past your capacity all the time.
Wow, thank you, Toshi. Max?
Also kind of talking about, well, burnout and decolonizing and rest. For me, I know food isn't a love language, but if it was, it would be mine. And I think that, like, if you think about it, like, I think in America we eat very, like, you know, like American, like, white food. But for me, like, whenever I'm feeling like really overwhelmed by all of that feeling, I go back to food, and I go back to what is like something that like will bring me in touch with something that is not white and something that is not like American and not Eurocentric, and what is something that will like, I was also raised by white people, so there's a disclaimer there. So a lot of how I was in touch with my culture growing up and how my parents kind of taught me as much as they could about where I came from was through food. So I think that, like, for me, it's just such a comfort point of A, like my childhood, B, learning more about where I've come from, C, decolonizing, and D, eating food is taking care of yourself and resting. So that is also revolutionary kind of in that. That's just one practice that I personally have, but I think it's nice.
I also want to add something about resting and activism and what Naomi said about being very personable. I think when someone is actively involved in revolution, it has something to do very closely with their identity. And when a person is resting after activi- doing activism for a long time, it does not mean that it's erased from their identity. And I just want to make that clear that what BIPOC people, whoever they are actively out there, they need rest. And resting does not mean that it's going to erase and it's going to go away. But the difference here is that if it does not really closely relate to your identity, you need to make sure that whatever you're doing is worth your time and it has an impact on whatever you're doing. So try to embrace and erase the whiteness, but that does not immediately erase from your identity. Not saying that you should erase it all of a sudden, but work towards it.
That was so powerful. The art of balance and rest and food and all the things, and leaning into what feels good for you, honestly. So wow, that went by so fast, didn't it? Am I crazy for thinking that? Like, that was 1 hour. What? So I just want to give a couple quick thank yous to everyone. First, our whole entire panel. Y'all are amazing. This was so good. Thank you to ArtsEmerson, Emerson Intercultural, Flawless, Najim, and Tamia. So yeah, I want to just share that there's going to be more Tough Topic Tuesdays next semester, and folks are always able to listen in at WECBN FM, or you can look at the Facebook Live on Emerson Intercultural. I am going to drop the link right now for the Emerson Student of Color Power Card with all the resources that everyone should just go check out and go read. And also, I want to share the live Google form to collect resources. This is something that Tough Topic Tuesday does, which is super awesome. And I want to invite everyone to share. I saw a bunch of people sharing some resources in the chat about some of the stuff that we were talking about in our conversations. So please feel free to add that to our Google form the Google form to collect the resources, and everyone should go check that out. Also, I'm going to share some upcoming topics for Tough Topic Tuesday, include imposter syndrome, which is so real, I know, just in general, but especially at Emerson. Another topic is going to be protect Black women, Afro-Latinx identity. And we are going to have a super special Tough Topic Tuesday on March 2nd, where we're going to be talking about mass incarceration and abolition. And specifically, we are going to have another keynote address by Raymond Santana of the Exonerated Five on Friday, March 5th, which is so awesome and incredible. I also just wanted to take a moment. We talked about a lot today, so I wanted to maybe present us to do a collective breath, a collective community breath on the way out. Just so that we can ground ourselves. We talked about a lot of sensitive and vulnerable kind of subjects today. So let's do that together. I just want to invite everyone to do so. So maybe just find a comfortable seat. If you feel comfortable, you can lightly close your eyes, lengthening through your spine, grounding through your pelvis. Maybe even putting your tongue on the roof of your mouth, allowing your jaw to relax. Now we can take a deep breath in, breathing in rest and balance and what feels good to us. And exhale things that do not, that negativity, the things that do not quite serve us. I invite you all to open your eyes. Thank you all for that. That was great. Thank you. Do our panel have any last words that they would like to share on our way out?
I just want to thank you all for the opportunity, for this time to be in the same space together, to have this powerful conversation where we're really just talking and really just exciting each other with our own mindsets. It's something that I don't know, that community sense is built and reestablished and reaffirmed and things like this. So I truly thank you for that.
Yes, thank you everyone for coming here today. This was awesome. And thank you, Toshi, especially for coming into our panel today. This was so incredible. I love just soaking in your wisdom. I love it. And also, Toshi, do you want to quickly talk about your podcast and let people know? Because it's truly incredible.
I just want to give thanks to you as a great moderator for this discussion. And yes, I have a podcast with Adrienne Marie Brown called Octavia's Parables. And we're almost through this book, but you can go in most places where podcasts are and start from the beginning. You can read along with it, or you can, if you already know the book, you can just listen in. And when we finish Parable of the Sower, we're going to take a break and come back in February and start Parable of the Talents. So it's been a really amazing thing to be reading at this time. You can imagine. So yeah, check it out. Thank you.
I love that. Awesome. Thank you all for joining and participating. And thank you for all our attendees for listening in today. Y'all are awesome.